On this episode of Roadkill's Junkyard Gold, we're back in Anderson, Alabama at Stevens Performance, exploring the world of full-size Mopar C-body muscle. I'm Steve Mignonti, hot rod historian, author, and lover of all things cars. I travel all across the country to uncover the forgotten and hidden gems of the automotive world. This is Roadkill's Junkyard Gold. We are back in Anderson, Alabama at Stevens Performance, an all-Mopar junkyard with 58 acres packing 3,000 vintage Mopars. When most people think of Mopar muscle cars, they think of the compact A-body Darts and Dusters or the mid-size B-body Chargers, Roadrunners, and GTXs. Well, we have to remember the full-size C-body platform could be had with just as much muscle as any Charger RT or GTX. On this episode of Roadkill's Junkyard Gold, let's explore the world of full-size C-body Mopar muscle. A100 van, Dodge Dart Sport. And this pair of cars right here on the end, this is a 61 Dodge Lancer, and that is a 63 Dodge Dart. Gives us a chance to talk about the fact that Chrysler Corporation used three basic platforms in the 1960s. A-body compact, B-body midsize, and of course the C-body full-size cars. And Chrysler Corporation did use the A-body in Dodge and Plymouth versions, but Chrysler itself never got a compact A-body. Don't know why, but it didn't happen. Now the Lancer was launched in 61, built through 62, but its bones are the 1960 Plymouth Valiant. Kind of a weird car. Some folks have called this a nightmare frozen in steel. I don't know, it's kind of funky. I like them. The 63 Dart, by contrast, has a whole different body style. This would eventually evolve into things like the Dart 340, the Hemi Darts of 68. So while these cars have very different styling on the outside, they both share the same A-body compact bones. '72 Fury Grand Coupe, hideaway headlights, kind of cool. '73 Dodge Polara. This is a cop car with the wigwag on the A-pillar. And a 1968 Sport Fury convertible. The Sport Fury was a C-body, full-size car, about 20% bigger than a Roadrunner. And I see something right here, Commando V8, which tell us this one was not born with the base 318 two-barrel small block, but rather either had the 383 two-barrel, 383 four-barrel, or if we're lucky, maybe the 440 Magnum, which was an option. To see which engine this car was born with, we go to the VIN. I don't believe it. The letter L, 440. The L code 440 Super Commando was also used in the Plymouth GTX in 1968. It's the hottest engine you could get in a full-size Mopar, short of the 426 Hemi, which was not sold in Furies like this one. So this thing had the hot 440 Super Commando with 375 horsepower, 480 foot-pounds of torque, and a mere $281 over the base 318 two-barrel. I don't know why the whole world didn't select that engine. Standard equipment on all Sport Furies was a center console missing here and front bucket seats, which added the Sport to the Fury. But something even cooler on this one is the optional 4-speed manual transmission. Here are the pedals, there's the hole in the floor, the distinctive Chrysler tunnel pump. At one point in time, there was an A833 4-speed manual underneath that floor. Somebody banged gears with a 440 4-speed C-body convertible right here, way back in 1968. Of the 2,489 Sport Fury convertibles built, only 497 were built with the 4-speed, and of those, most were 383s. So a 440 4-speed car, C-body, full-size convertible, maybe 60 or 70 of these things were built, statistically infinitesimal. Now the deal with 440 4-speed Mopars is the rear axle. In B-body land, Roadrunners, GTXs, you got a Dana 60 rear axle with a 9 3/4 inch ring gear. The 8 3/4 wasn't strong enough. Now in the world of the C-body, a larger car, I gotta wonder, what kind of rear axle are we gonna find under this thing? Normally a Dana 60 rear axle is kind of triangular at the bottom. This one is definitely a Spicer axle, but it's not a 60 series. To find out which one it is, we scrape this area right here. There'll be a cast-in number. Drum roll, please. That's weird. I don't see a number, but from my junkyard experience, this looks like a Spicer Model 53. Chrysler said, hey, that 8 3/4 with the 444 speed isn't going to work. The shock loads would probably break the ring and pinion, cause problems, warranty issues. Let's use something else. They reached back into the parts bin and used the Spicer Model 53, also known as a Dana 53. I do see here a limited slip tag, which means we probably have Sure Grip. Yep, there is. I turn the yoke, both tires spin in the same direction, and a ratio tag, I'm gonna bet that's probably a 3-2-3, so a pretty mild gear, not a 391, not a drag strip 410 type of ratio. These axles were also used under Lincolns and Mercuries in the late 50s, early 60s, and the ring gear inside of this one is bigger than the 8 3/4 Chrysler. So here we have it, the mystery is solved. 440 4-speed C bodies, didn't use a Dana 60, they used a Spicer Dana Model 53 with a Sure Grip. Very cool. Like all 4-barrel big block cars, this 440 has dual exhaust. Now these have sort of a gooseneck shape formed into them, which is factory stock. These are the original tips from 1968. The gooseneck helps the car have extra ground clearance. By bending the pipe, go up an incline, the pipes won't rub as they would if they were straight out the back of the car. Okay, let's look in the trunk. Very cool. Here is the original 11-inch clutch disc from this car's 4-speed past. It has 23 splines, which tells us something. In the world of Chrysler 4-speeds, the ones used behind 440s and Hemis had 18 teeth. It's called the Hemi box. Well, apparently, the 4-speed used in this car was a more pedestrian 23 spline unit as found with 383 engines. Chrysler thought the Hemi box, the expense of it, wasn't warranted in this full-sized C-body application. So this is an amazingly rare and original car, especially with its Elvis Presley scarce rear axle. This thing deserves to be restored back to factory stock. We'd find a 68 440 Super Commando, same as a Magnum in the Dodge world. A 23 spline 4-speed won't be hard to find. They're swap meet ready. The rear axle, already here with the Sure Grip. Let's restore it back to its original white with a blue gut splendor and bang some gears with that 4-speed 440. It'd be a blast. Stacked headlamps until 1968 on full-size Mopars, C-bodies. This is a 1965 Sport Fury. This is the year that the Sport Fury grew from the B-body to the C-body platform, and also the second year for a factory 4-speed in any Chrysler product, which once poked right through this hole in the floor, and somebody banged gears from this spot. Has the pedal dress up, which was standard fare on these cars, but something kind of weird on this one is the instrument cluster. We see park, reverse, neutral, drive, 2-1. So I'm going to bet this is a factory 4-speed that somebody swapped in for the broken instrument panel from an automatic car. You got to keep your eyes open in a junkyard. If it's a factory 4-speed, and I bet it is, this is one of a couple hundred built. Super rare. Chrysler Newport 4-door monster, another one. Probably a 383, maybe a 440. Oh, this is neat, a convertible. This is a 1969 Dodge Polara 500. I see it has bucket seats, that makes it the 500. Dodge advertising in '69 called the Polara what other low-price cars want to be when they grow up. And grow up the Polara did, replacing the concave sides of 1968 and prior with a more bloated tubular shape they called the fuselage styling. These are large cars by comparison to a Dart or a Charger. These are about 25% larger, but they're still cool cars. Let's see what we got in the trunk. Okay, this is kind of neat. This is the P45 vacuum trunk release. The Polara was a luxury car, or it could be, when you ordered a thing like this. You could push a button inside, which would send a vacuum signal to this diaphragm, which would then pull the lever and open the trunk for you. I do see up here, clutch, brake, and gas pedal, all 3 pedals in place. The factory hump has been excised. That tin doesn't fool me, though. This thing was originally a factory 4-speed car. 1969 was the final year that Dodge or Plymouth offered the full-size C-body with the factory 4-speed. 1970, it'd be gone. And by 1969, the convertible top was power, it was standard equipment, and the instrument cluster on this one has a space for the power top up and down switch, which will not be found on a hard top, obviously. Option P31 was the power windows, and they added $105 to the tally. And that same $105 is the price of the 383 4-barrel engine, which had 105 horsepower more than the base 230 horsepower 318 2-barrel. So go figure, the same $105 would buy you either the power windows or the 383 4-barrel. $1 per horsepower, I think I'll take the 383. Speaking of which, let's see if it's still there under the hood. Yeah, of course. The engine is missing, but we can learn what was here by going to the fender tag. We see E63. Yep, this was born with the 383 Magnum 4-barrel engine with 335 horsepower, essentially the same engine used in the Roadrunner and Challenger RTs as a base engine in 1970. The only thing better would have been the 440, which was optional. At the front of this 69, we also see the first year 4 no stacked headlights on the full-size Dodges. They went to a horizontal outline here. And look at this. This is the Superlight. Superlight was an option for 50 bucks. It was a quartz iodine light, which was aimed always at the right-hand side of the road. The idea was you could drive at night with your Superlight on and not have to worry about dimming the high beams for oncoming drivers. The Superlight system and bulb were designed by Sylvania Electric Company of Danvers, Massachusetts, where my grandmother spent her entire career. The Monaco and Polara used a die-cast metal grille, and when ordered with the Superlight, the grille was specific. There's a circular hole cut into the metal fins. This is not some quick add-on piece. This is factory installed. The Superlight's been removed, but the flange and the wiring harness and the receiver for the bulb are still here. But the Superlight was only seen in 1969 and 70. It was illegal in some states, and it wasn't very popular. People didn't quite understand it, although today, every car has halogen headlights. If this were mine, well, it's too far gone. The rust on this thing is worse than the Titanic. But at one point in time, this was a fresh, light blue, beautiful 4-speed 383 convertible Polara 500. And the final year for a 4-speed C-body. What a neat car it must have been. '65 Plymouth Satellite, 2-door hardtop, the basis of the Sox and Martin altered wheelbase stuff in 1965. Another Newport, Rhode Island, home of the Newport Jazz Festival. I don't think these cars have anything to do with jazz music. '67 Fury 3 wagon, family hauler. Sold new at Lee Bentley in Huntsville, Alabama, Rocket City, USA. Wow, the horizontal strobe stripe on this '70 Sport Fury tells us it's something special. This is an S23. In 1970, the Fury lineup consisted of the Fury 1, Fury 2, Fury 3, Sport Fury GT, and this, the Sport Fury S23. Only available in 1970, the S23 was something of an insurance buster, which had all the plumage, and by adding the horizontal strobe stripe, the S23 looked like the Sport Fury GT, but didn't have quite the punch. The stripe on this was actually reflective, made by 3M, the makers of adhesive tape, and at night the black graphic reflected light. It was actually sold as a safety feature, and the same 3M tape material was used in 1969 by the Ford Mustang Mach 1, which also lit up at night. The engine's been removed from this one, but we can learn what it was born with by looking at the fender tag. We see E44. Okay, this car was built with the base 318 2-barrel with 230 horsepower. Optional were the 383 2-barrel and 383 4-barrel, but the big 440 was strictly off limits, only available in the Sport Fury GT. But here's the thing, the base price on the S23 was $3,379, a full $546 less than the 440-powered Sport Fury GT. But from the outside, you can't tell the difference. Back in 1970, if you had a big engine in your car, you paid extra at the insurance company. This car got around that. All Sport Furies, the GT and the S23, came with this very cool grille. Blacked out, it has a big chrome horizontal loop, and it was Plymouth's first hideaway headlamp grille. These are made of metal. They retract and go down with electric motors, unlike the plastic doors used on Chargers in 1970. Lesser Furies would have had exposed headlamps and a friendlier chrome-type grille. This is a mean, wide, menacing-looking car. On this S23, the power brake booster activates the 11-inch drum brakes, which were standard. Optional were 11-inch disc brakes. Specific wheels were seen on S23s and Sport Fury GTs. They're 15 by 6 inches with 16 rectangular slots all the way around, and this cool center cap, which is unique to these rims. These 15-inch wheels also allowed the use of 15-inch tires for better handling, whereas lesser Fury 1, 2, and 3s would have had 14-inch wheels and tires. Inside, the only manual transmission offered in 1970 was the 3-speed on the column. The 4-speed was gone after 1969. This one has the optional torque flight behind the 318, an automatic transmission. Front bucket seats were standard in Sport Furies, and this one on the transmission tunnel has signs of the brackets that once held the center armrest/buddy seat. The two buckets could be made into a bench by folding up the armrest and turning it into a third spot for a third passenger up front. I love how the S23 reflective strobe stripe makes its way all around the belt line of the car. In the trunk, a lot of goodies here. All Sport Furies came with the big 8 3/4 Chrysler rear axle. On the S23, no matter what engine you got, 318 or 383, the standard axle ratio was 323:1 versus the 276 or the 293 ratio seen on lesser Fury 1, 2, and 3s. It gave the engine a little more torque multiplication and better off-the-line squirt without doing anything under the hood of the engine. And again, 323 axle standard in S23. Now, this is a very rare car. Of the 25,695 Sport Furies built in 1970, only 689 were S23s. Incredibly uncommon. It's kind of rusty, but there's enough of it here to restore. I'd say let's go with a stock restoration, but packet full of 572 cubic inches worth of Mopar Performance Hemi crate engine. 650 horsepower, 660 foot-pounds of torque. This S23 insurance buster imposter could pull up to any Sport Fury GT with a 440 and stomp on it. Bumblebee stripe on this one, Charger 69, but I don't see the RT here, so this is probably somebody's imagination or perhaps a little bit of envy. They wanted an RT, so they painted a stripe, but we're not fooled. We know better. '70 Imperial, massive. Another Imperial. These are often donors for their 440 engines. Oh, how cool is this? 1970, this is a Sport Suburban. And 1970 was the first year that the Sport Fury line was expanded to include wagons and four-doors. Now, a lot of you GM guys will know that the word Suburban is one of the oldest names in the business, going all the way back to about 1936 or so, as a General Motors Chevrolet SUV vehicle. But in the 1950s and 60s and early 70s, Plymouth also used the term Suburban on cars like this. One detail I love on all 1970 Furies is the hood. They were pressed with these double humps that are pure muscle. This also has the optional turn signal indicators. The hump has a hole punched into it, and these die-cast turn signal indicators are in place so that when you hit the directional, you can see the car blinking through the windshield instead of through the dashboard. And when you had the optional 383 engine, you got these emblems right here on top of each hood blister. This one has 383, although the 440 was also seen on the Sport Fury GT in 1970. So this is basically a muscle car station wagon. Pretty cool. '65 or 6 Plymouth VIP, 71 Chrysler Newport. Oh, the hideaway headlights, the strobe stripe down the side, Daddy Longlegs Part 2. We just saw the Plymouth S23, that 1970 imposter. Well, the Sport Fury GT is the real thing. They were only made in 70 and 71, and this is a 1971, the second and final version of the Sport Fury GT. And this car is unique in so many ways. Let's dig in. In 1970, the Plymouth Sport Fury arrived on the scene as the biggest member of the Plymouth Rapid Transit system. The cars were guaranteed to run 14 second quarter miles. And a car as big as the C-Body Sport Fury, that meant 440 power. While the 1970 Sport Fury GT had a 440, it was the base 350 horse engine found in station wagons. But for 1971, Plymouth stepped things up with the big dog, 375 horse 440 Super Commando, the same engine used in the GTX and the Cuda, which would have been under the engine bay of this car here. The difference between the standard 440 and the 440 Super Commando came down to camshaft timing, carburetor jetting, and the exhaust manifolds. The manifolds were changed to a more streamlined design. They call them the high upswept exhaust manifolds, and it helped bump power from 350 to 375 horsepower. A detail seen on all Sport Fury is the hoop grille. In 1971, it's broken into 8 segments, but it has the same hideaway headlamps with the electric motors and metal doors. Another detail added in 71 only to the Sport Fury GT are the 6 fake vents on top of the front fenders, and these are not all the same size. They're big, smaller, small. So if you need these things for restoration, good luck finding them. Luckily, this car is pretty much intact and they're still here. And like all good Mopar muscle cars, there's plenty of bright work and plumage to be seen on the Sport Fury GT. For 1971, Plymouth changed up the hood. The flat hood with the dual bumps in 1970 gave way to a flat hood with a center spine. This bright graphic, which is now faded, once read GT 440 in reflective 3M tape. Let's bring it back to life. Voila, it's 1971 all over again. And like the 1970 Sport Fury GT, the strobe stripe down the side of the car remained, although it was changed up to become blockier, but still reflective. Inside the Sport Fury GT, there were no special graphics beyond the usual Sport Fury emblems. We do see bucket seats, which were standard equipment. In the middle, we have the buddy seat, which we hinted at in that S23. We saw the remains of it. When it's down, you've got an armrest. When you're lifted up, there you go. You can get 3 across in the front. Transmission choices came down to one, the automatic transmission, in this case, the 727 Torque Flight. This one could have had an optional console shifter, a little sportier, but this was ordered with the basic 3 on the column, the Torque Flight up there. Like the Fury S23, the Sport Fury GT rode on special 15x6 wheels with 16 slots and 870/15 Goodyear polyglass tires. Well, this one has day 2 modification in the form of Cragar SS mags. More recently, the Cragar mag's been given something called a unilug. That means the holes for the lugs are oval, so they can be used on Ford, Chrysler, and GM cars. Well, these are old school Cragars with the round hole. So these were probably bolted on this car back in 1971. Price on this car when new was $4,090, a full $415 more than a GTX Coupe and $615 more than a CUDA Coupe. So these things were not cheap. And of the 84,172 Sport Furies built in 1971, only 375 were Sport Fury GTs with the 440 Super Commando. This is a super rare car, so it has to be restored. I take it right back to square one, pack a 440 Super Commando under the hood, high upshift Torque Flight under the floor pan. I'd keep the 8 3/4 with its 323 gears, and I'd put it on a set of Cragar SS mags. No unilugs, please. '70 Satellite, and the fender flares don't lie. This is a Dodge Magnum GT. Magnums were only sold in 1978 and 79. Basically, the Magnum was Charger's replacement, but in 78, Dodge sold the Charger and the Magnum side by side. By this point in time, the Hemis were gone, the six-packs were gone, and the GT was as sporty as things got. One determiner on the GT are these steel and rubber fender flares right here. A lot of folks think that the new Dodge Challenger Demon is the first car with a wide body kit. Not so fast. Another detail we see on this one here are the T-tops, which cost $643 in 1978. Move the handle, lift this up and out, and you have the next best thing to a convertible. This Magnum is one of 47,827 built in 1978, but of them, only 8,608 were GTs with the rubber fender flares. This is a pretty cool car, the end of the line for the B-body. '69 Plymouth Fury 2-door. About a 67 or so. Oh, 1970 Sport Fury. Cool car. We can always tell a Sport Furies by the hidden headlights and the new for 1970 wraparound loop chrome grille. The first Fury was seen in 1956. It had a 303 cubic inch V8 with 240 horsepower and was really a revelation for Plymouth, which before 1955 was strictly 6-cylinder flathead powered boring cars. But the Fury really brought Plymouth into the youth market. 1959 brought the Sport Fury, which through 1969 was only a 2-door model. Well, for 1970, Plymouth expanded the Sport Fury brand to include wagons, 4-doors, but for me, the 2-door fastbacks are the best. 1969 did bring something new in the world of the brakes. The drums grew these fins, which behave like heat sinks. So when heat's created by the drum, it radiates into the fins and then dissipates into the airstream. By contrast, the previous drums were these smooth castings like this here. Disc brakes were optional on Furies in 1969 and 70, but this one has the original drums. Now, being a C-body, the Sport Fury is a semi-unitized design. And basically, semi-unitized means that the unitized part is from the firewall back, where the entire vehicle and frame is one piece. The non-unitized part is the subframe, which bolts to the underside of the floor. By contrast, the A-body, B-body, and E-bodies were fully unitized, like this Charger body. That means that the inner fenders and the engine support and front suspension are permanently welded to the body shell. So either way, unitized or semi-unitized, it was cheaper to make, lighter, and also did a better job of isolating road noise than body on frame. While lesser Furies came with a bench seat up front, Sport Furies came standard with bucket seats. These are the first generation. These are square topped with separate headrests. There was a running change which brought in the high back bucket seat, which is similar to what was found in the Dodge Challenger and Plymouth Barracuda in 1970. Earlier in this episode, we saw that 1970 S23 Fury and that 71 Sport Fury GT. They had the buddy seat. Well, this one had what they should have had, the full-length C16 center console. For a mere $54.45, the console went between the seats and the automatic shifter would have sprouted out from the floor. Very sporty. This car is an original FE5 Rally Red Sport Fury. With its black vinyl top and bright red paint, this thing must have been a stunner when it was new. Of the 39,268 Sport Furies built in 1970, only 5,688 were fastbacks like this one, so it's a pretty special car. Now this one was born a 318 with a little 904 torque flight, but there's no reason we couldn't change it up. We could respray it in that Rally Red, put a fresh vinyl top on it, put a 426 Street Hemi with an air grabber hood, a 4-speed pistol grip, Dana 60 rear axle, and some 15x7 rallies on this thing, and go chase some roadrunners. Well, that's our show. We saw how 4-speed manual transmissions and big block V8s added muscle car attitude to the 1968 Plymouth Sport Fury and 1969 Dodge Polara 500. We also saw all three performance variations of the 1970 and 71 Plymouth Fury, the Sport Fury, the S23, and the Sport Fury GT. All told, the next time somebody starts bragging about a 340 Duster or a 440 six-pack Super B, remind them the full-size C-Body could be just as potent. Until next time, hasta mañana. Drum roll, please. Okay. Yeah, it's under a lot of grease. Can speed this part up, I suppose.